got the man that's going to sort out this Eagles mystery with us tonight in Inquirer.com's Paul Domowitch. He's going to return to Philly Pressbox Radio. So, Paul, welcome to the show. Let's get this bag off of Chet's head, and let's do it quick. What's going on with the Birds?
Hey, Paul. Well, here's the deal. I'm going to take this headgear off, but you have to explain to us how the Eagles can play as poorly as they did on Sunday after going 2 weeks since their previous game and getting some guys back healthy, and they still look like crap. How's that possible?
Well, it took a come from behind effort the last time they played the Giants. So I guess it's, there's not that much difference talent-wise in those two teams. So, the Eagles just right now aren't a very good team, even with people getting healthy. So we'll see what happens here. They got 5 games starting Sunday that are going to be tough to win any of them.
Yeah. Well, Paul, obviously the first question that nobody knows the answer to, and you probably don't either, is why do you go for 2 when you're down 4 in the middle of the third quarter? I like Doug Pederson's aggressiveness, but that one makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it didn't to me either at the time. You could have been, you kick the extra point, you're within a field goal to tie, and you miss, and still, I don't know. He didn't give a clear answer. Always points to analytics. I don't think he understands. He just listens to his analytics people who tell him this is what you're supposed to do, which is a bad way to run a business.
Well, in your piece the other day, Paul, you detailed 5 reasons the Eagles lost to the Giants. One of them, forgetting about the run. Now, Doug had that exchange with a reporter on Monday with, Doug touting how much they did run, but it was actually just 19 rushes by backs, not the 50% that he was sort of implying. Now, even though they did have success running, they could have run Boston Scott more. He's had success against the Giants in the past. Why is he so stubborn about the run?
I have no idea. I mean, Boston Scott had, after that 56-yard touchdown run, he did not carry the ball again the rest of the game. Miles Sanders finished the third quarter with 14, 13-yard runs and carried the ball just 4 more times the rest of the game. One of them was on a 3rd and 18 when it was basically a throwaway play. So, it's just the way, that's his mindset. It's never going to change. This year, I think because they're playing from behind so much, he feels even more compelled to have to throw the ball. Their run play percentage is as low as it's been since Doug took over in 2016. But, when your quarterback's struggling as bad as Carson is right now, and you can run the ball, and they could run the ball last week against the Giants, I don't know why you don't just keep pounding it.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Carson Wentz, and certainly we have to talk about him. I kind of feel like, Paul, and jump in here if you disagree, for sure, that they're kind of in a awkward position with him in that there's so – we know he's turning the ball over too much with the fumbles. We know he's trying to press and push the ball down the field and making bad decisions. But I think I thought some in this game, it was almost the opposite. It was like he didn't want to make a mistake. And he did, now all of a sudden, he reminds me, and maybe I'm pushing this a little too far, reminds me of a young Brett Favre who was a gunslinger who made some of the most god-awful plays. But at the end of the day, he made plays. And to me, you don't want to take that aggressiveness out, but you can't keep having the turnovers either.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things going on there. One, his accuracy is probably it's at an all-time low, and it's hurt his confidence, and so he's afraid to make some throws. And I think right now, I think a lot of these young receivers are going to be very good at ultimately. Right now, without a spring to have worked with Carson or preseason games to have worked with him, there's not a lot of chemistry or trust between him and them. And so I think he's afraid to kind of let go on a lot of these plays unless it's a downfield throw where, he doesn't really, worst case scenario, it's like a punt. But I asked Doug about that first, remember that 3rd and 3 on their first possession? And he tried to hit Jalen Reagor on it was a rub play, and he was open for a split second, and Carson kind of hesitated, and to me, it looked like, he just wasn't confident enough to make that throw when you had to make it. And, Doug put the blame on the receivers, saying that they didn't carry out the pick properly, and that Jalen didn't run the route properly. So I don't know if he was being kind to Carson or being accurate. My guess is the truth is somewhere in between.
I'm guilty, Paul, of listening to too much sports talk radio sometimes. And after every single loss, particularly those when Carson Wentz is subpar, people will mention the name Frank Reich. How much of Wentz's early success was tied to the presence of the former offensive coordinator, and does he miss him maybe?
I mean, Frank is, one of the best offensive minds in the game, so I think he definitely misses him. But I mean, I have a problem and have had a problem with their whole offensive staff and the way it's arranged right now. They fired Groh last year as offensive coordinator. They chose not to hire just bring in a new offensive coordinator, I think partly because no good offensive coordinator would take the job and not have the play calling duties, which Doug wanted to keep. So instead, they brought in a whole bunch of people with different titles: senior offensive advisor, senior offensive consultant. They made Press Taylor part quarterbacks coach and mainly the passing game coordinator. So Carson really has no one that's with him constantly, can put his foot up his butt when he needs a foot up his butt. And I think all of that's hurt Carson, and I think it's hurt his development.
Hey, Paul, I'm going to throw up a question here that one of our viewers put in there. And ask Paul, is Carson better out of the pocket, the West Coast option, which Doug Pederson was reared in? What do you think? Thanks, Big John Roberts, for throwing that in there.
Question we ask Doug constantly. Why isn't he getting him out of the pocket, especially considering the problems they've had with protection? I mean, their two guards that they went with on Sunday were just horrible. Matt Pryor does not belong in a starting lineup. Neither does Sua Opeta. They just got beat mercilessly. And Jason Kelsey had his worst game of the season. He struggles with big defensive linemen that line up over him, and that you saw him struggle. That was one of the reasons for a lot of the bad snaps. So I mean, the solution is get him out of the pocket. You can go back to that throw to Miles Sanders last year in the end zone when he was on the run, almost out of bounds, and fires a rocket to Miles for a touchdown. I mean, so he's very accurate when he's out of the pocket extending plays. Why they're not doing more of it, I have no idea. Again, I think it goes back to the whole makeup of their offensive staff right now. Somebody's seems to be pushing against the idea and wants him in the pocket. And I think Carson, he seems to want to be in the pocket, yet he's got no pocket awareness. He's you watch Tom Brady in the pocket. He's got no speed whatsoever, but he knows how to take two steps and avoid a rush. He just has that instinctive feel for how to buy another second. Carson doesn't have that, and he's a fine runner. He's big body, kind of got that Ben Roethlisberger body, but he can't avoid a rush when it comes to just buying a split second, and he hangs onto the ball too long. So yeah, I mean they should be getting him out of the pocket as much as possible. He kind of Doug indicated today they would, they did it a little bit more Sunday, and will probably do it more of it going forward. Time will tell.
You mentioned the O-line, and that leads me to my next question. Why is Pederson so unwilling to put Jason Peters back at right guard, which was the plan, and, go with Jordan Mailata at left tackle? They were seemingly going to go that way after Dillard got hurt earlier this year, but yet he's insisting on sticking with Peters on the left and putting a Matt Pryor, who, as you said, can't really play, or the other guy who played on Sunday at guard. What's going on there?
Well, football teams are kind of like a bunch of different states run by governors. That's really not his call. I mean, he leaves the defense to Jim Schwartz, which is why I don't think I've asked a question about defense to Doug in 5 years, because he has no say over it. And with the offensive line, Jeff Stoutland makes the decisions who's out there. And, Doug trusts him. And it's Jeff who is, he loves Jason Peters. He refuses to admit this guy is done. And, they signed him, though, to play guard. When they had to move him outside, he's done okay. But again, if you're looking at the product as a whole, you'd be in a much better shape moving him inside if Mulata can do the job on the outside. Now, this week, I probably wouldn't do that because Myles Garrett's going to kill whoever's out there. I think Jason Peters is going to be in for a long, long day. And, that wouldn't be good for Mulata's confidence. And they're getting Isaac Samalo back this week. So that should help the offensive line a little bit. He'll be back at left guard, which that'll be as healthy as they've been since maybe week 2 when Isaac first got hurt. So, there is some hope from that perspective.
Well, Paul, you mentioned the defense. You mentioned Jim Schwartz. They weren't very good either, in my opinion. They did regroup there a little bit later in the second half, but they were not very good.
Those two opening drives just killed them. I mean, you give up 14 points on their first 2 possessions, and you have an offense that's struggling and can't play catch up, kind of puts you behind the 8 ball. And on those first 2 drives, you saw what they don't do well kind of rear its ugly head. They gave up the long touchdown to the quarterback on a read option, and they also struggled with stopping Wayne Gallman and Alfred Morris on those first 2 drives. Now they worked that out later. After that, Gallman and Morris were non-factors, but then Daniel Jones started. They were putting in pressure on him, but they weren't quite getting there, and he was making some throws that made you think that maybe the Giants aren't so dumb after all in drafting him. They had good coverage on a few plays, particularly in the fourth quarter, those back-to-back long throws down the field. I mean, the coverage looked pretty good. He still put it right where it needed to be, and those long passes killed them.
Paul, last winter I said there's no way Alshon Jeffrey is back with the team this fall. I'm wrong. He's still here, barely.
More or less.
Yeah, I know it's largely a financial decision, but why not just move on from him now? And for that matter, the always injured Deshaun Jackson too. Just put those guys in the rearview mirror.
Question we asked too. I have no idea. They tried to trade him, but he was untradeable.
Yeah.
But why not just say that there's the end of the bench. We'll call you when your contract's up. It makes no sense, especially since you're taking playing time away from your young kids. He played 18 snaps, I think, on Sunday.
One target.
Targeted once, no catches. Meanwhile, John Hightower, who until a couple of weeks ago, had kind of been an integral part of their offense. They were throwing a lot of deep balls to him. They weren't completing a lot, but he was clearly. The kid's got some talent. I think he's going to be a decent player. He plays 3 snaps on Sunday, so it just seems like a waste. But I'm not sure why somebody felt that Alshon still could help them. I don't see that happening.
Hey, and with all this said, and Chet with a bag over his head, the Eagles are in first place. Go figure. They're in first place in the East. They still control their own destiny. I don't know if they can win any of these next five games, but they could still win the East at maybe 6 wins. Is that possible, Paul?
I think it's going to take 7. I looked at the Cowboys and the Giants schedules. I didn't look at Washington because they're Washington. And the Giants have some tough games. They're going to end up with at least 10, probably 11 losses. But the Cowboys, the Vikings are better right now, so next week's game against Minnesota is going to be tough for them. But they really only have one more game that's tough. So it's possible they could finish 8-8 or 7-9. So, my feeling's been that the Eagles need to finish 7-8-1 to win this division. And that means, they finished the season with Dallas and Washington. Okay, well, let's say they can win those. They got 5 games before that. They've got to win 2 of these next 5, and none of them are, they're not going to be favored in any of them. So, I mean, but again, this is a team that played Pittsburgh and Baltimore tough. So they're going to be healthy at least. Maybe Carson Wentz gets, finally turns it around. Who knows? But right now it does not look promising.
Well, they do have Cleveland this week there. The Browns, I think, started as a 4.5-point favorite, but I think it's down to 3.5 or even 3 in some places. How do you see this matchup? I know the Browns have a great running attack, but do the Eagles have a shot?
They have a shot, but they've got to stop Chubb and they've got to stop Kareem Hunt for starters. Because if they don't, the Browns will just run it all day. I mean, they'd be happy to, have this be a ball control 40 carry game and win 10-7. What the Eagles need to do and what they haven't been able to do all season is grab the lead and make them play catch up where they've got to throw the ball. And they without Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry's got a rib injury and is playing like at 50-60%. They don't have a lot of weapons. I mean, Baker Mayfield's certainly capable of throwing a couple of picks if you can make them throw the ball. But right now, I think in 5 of their 9 games, Baker Mayfield has thrown the ball 10 or fewer times in the second half because that's the way they want to play it. They want to play old-time football right now, and they've got 2 running backs that are certainly capable of doing that. The Eagles their run defense statistically is horrible. They're like 26th in the league right now because they've given up so many yards to quarterbacks and to wide receivers on misdirection plays this season. They've done a good job on running backs. But they've never faced, except for Ezekiel Elliott, who didn't have an offensive line in front of them. They really haven't played a good running back this year. So now they're going up against a team that's got a terrific line and 2 terrific and hard to tackle running backs. But if they can stop them somehow, they can win this game.
And that's exactly what worries me in the Jim Schwartz philosophy of not having linebackers. This is not a week you don't want to have linebackers because you're going to need them.
I go back to before Schwartz got here, and Andy was still here. They ran the wide 9 with Jim Washburn. Right. And, we always asked, when you spread your defensive linemen out like that and just have them come after the quarterback, the gaps are so huge for your linebackers. And if you have good linebackers, that's a tough enough task. This is not a good group of linebackers. And so, this team has to be very sound run fit-wise on Sunday. They've got to protect every gap. And if they do that and tackle well, they've got a chance. But, that's a lot of ifs.
Paul, I have 2 final questions for you, and this could be a tough one. I don't know. Who is the Eagles' MVP this season?
Wow. See, I guess Jalen Hurts is out.
We didn't even talk about him.
Brandon Graham, without a doubt.
Okay, I had Travis Fulgham, Brandon Graham, and the punter Cameron Johnston.
No, I'd say Brandon's having the best season of his career at 32, and I hope for his sake because he wants to get 10 sacks so badly, that happens for him.
And my second question I have for you, though, is if the Eagles do finish 5-10-1 or, God forbid, 4-11-1, is it possible that any heads will roll?
Well, the big question is will the quarterback's head roll? His future is not definite here, guys, especially after the season he's had. I thought it would take another major injury for them to – that's why they brought Jalen Hurts in. To develop as a backup quarterback, but also to consider as a possible replacement if Carson gets hurt or they decide they don't want to go forward with the rest of the guaranteed money on his contract, which I think kicks in like 2022. Well, right now he's playing so badly. He's got to play at some point here. If he doesn't turn it around this season, going into next season, he'll be here. He'll start, but replacing him with Jalen Hurts will be on the table.
Wow. Well, and that's what I was going to ask you was about Jalen Hurts. You pretty much covered my question. That surprises me a little bit, I guess. but they drafted him for a reason, so I guess that's all part of it.
Yeah, I think we'll see a little bit more of him at some point here in the remaining games. Not replacing Carson, but they've kind of hinted that at some point they would like turn over a series to him. Just to change of pace, get Carson off the field rather than move him over to wide receiver and that wildcat, and just run the option or run. I mean, I'm one of the few people that thinks Jalen Hurts can play.
I do. I'm on that train.
I mean, people think he's not accurate. He completed 70% of his passes at Oklahoma. In the 2 passes he threw, you could see that he can fling the ball. I mean, and they, deep down, Howie Roseman really likes that kind of football. I mean, you're seeing more. You're seeing Kyler Murray, you're seeing Lamar Jackson. You're seeing a lot of guys in this league, and the success they're having with a running quarterback. Now Carson can run, but not that kind of running where you would make it part of a regular staple of his game.
Well, it seems like if you're going to move on from Carson, whether it's this year, next year, or whatever, the NFL, as we've seen this for years and years, lots of egos involved to say, hey, we kicked the can on this pick some years ago, and we're ready to cut bait. That's a tough decision to make.
Yeah, it is, especially when you consider what they gave up to trade up for him. I mean, I'm not suggesting that they're giving up on him. I just think they're keeping their options open right now. I mean, worst case scenario, Carson Wentz turns it around or has a great season next year and goes on to play here as the starting quarterback for the next 10 years. And they've got a pretty good backup, a dependable backup quarterback for 4 years. That would be, that'd be fine with them. Then they could trade him or whatever, get a pick for him when he becomes a free agent. But I think they feel protected if things don't turn out with Carson or he suffers another major injury.
All right. Well, Paul, we are out of time. We certainly appreciate you coming by. Join us. Always great stuff. And let's do it again. And we're going to make the playoffs.
We'll see.
Thanks for having me.
All right.